The judge himself said in his opinion he does not quarrel with the Secretary's ability to prioritize who we remove, who we deport from this country. And so we're focused on deporting convicted criminals, threats to public safety, threats to border security. And there's a population of people who've been in this country for years who are not priorities and will not be deported in any administration, Republican or Democrat. And the net effect of this decision is we are not allowed to try to encourage them to come out of the shadows.
Our guest is a former Republican congressman, two-time presidential candidate, and presidential nominee of the Libertarian Party in 1988. He speaks his mind and fears no question. That's why he is here. Let's welcome Ron Paul back to MidPoint. Dr. Paul, pleasure to talk to you again.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Here we go now to Louisiana, where Justice Department lawyers are urging the federal appeals court to let the president move forward with his immigration plans. Of course, the judge says the president wasn't allowed to do it. Dr. Paul, the people in America, I got to tell you, they're probably sick and tired of hearing this go back and forth. They want something done. But the question is this ever going to get done in our lifetime? It seems as if we're going to be doing this immigration dance into the next century.
That's right. I think there's two issues. One is what Obama's doing, and the second issue is how he's doing it. Of course, I don't like executive orders and the president being a imperial-type president. I think Congress should be involved, but Congress has been very, very lax. So the answer to your question is I don't know when they'll ever get together on this. They've been messing around with a lot of problems in this country for a long, long time. They talk about economic problems and foreign policy problems, but from my viewpoint, things don't get better. We keep spending money, getting more involved, and now we have this mess with immigration. So my prediction is that you're not going to see it resolved very soon. It'll probably end up with, a Republican president here in the, next 2 years. So maybe something will change, but I'm not all that optimistic.
That's just it. Is it possible that what's happening here, the president will get his way? This immigration duel will end. He will have it exactly as he wants it. And then maybe, just maybe, and again, I'm just putting myself in a position of asking the question, would it be simpler than to undo the damage once it's done instead of continuing to fight this, what many people believe is a losing battle?
No, I think your suspicions are right. I think if he gets it through, it's going to be real hard to reverse it because Obamacare has been passed, but I don't expect, even with a Republican president, that the whole thing is going to be repealed. They'll tinker with it, but once it's in place, it's very, very difficult. And besides, some of this grandstanding by political parties is merely that, grandstanding for their base. So maybe the desire isn't there, either on the immigration or on the medical problems that we have. But I think the big question is why is government doing so much? Why are they involved in the things they're responsible for, like immigration, and they neglect that, but they get involved in so many other things.
Such as?
That's why the people are rightfully very upset.
Such as, Dr. Paul, the things that you say right now need to be taken right off the table immediately for the government that you believe then would allow them to focus on immigration and health care.
Well, I'd like to see the resources come home, and have a better immigration, program. Matter of fact, I'm not opposed to a good work program, but there's inefficiencies at the border. Our system encourages illegal immigration, mainly because of things like Obama's doing. They get free medical care and free education, so there's a tremendous incentive. Of course, we mess up the economy. And that means that there is a greater need, and the American people then become dependent on a welfare state. It's just all messed up from previous problems that we've had. But if we needed more resources to run a better program and have a work program here, under a truly free market, matter of fact, there's always a shortage of labor, and to some degree that has existed. I had as many complaints in my congressional office of people saying, hey, I need some workers. American people won't work. We need them in the fields. We need them to help us fish and different things like that. So it's the gross distortion that we have. And I think we have too many resources overseas, and that is one place where we could get the money to do a better job here.
Dr. Paul, I only got 30 seconds before we take a break, come back and talk some more, but everything you're talking about here is gloom and doom. Is there anything positive?
Yeah, no, I do. I think it's great positive, especially since I left Washington, and it's not because I left Washington, of course. No, I have a lot of optimism because this last couple of weeks I've been to the University of Texas, University of Minnesota, meet with a lot of young people. They understand the problems better than the members of Congress. They think government's too big. Liberty is the way to go. Less war, less socialism, less spending, less debt, sound money, look into the Fed. If we did those things, they actually are being convinced that that is a better way.
Okay.
And that is where I am optimistic, and that is what has to happen first before the politicians will listen.
Hold that thought. We've got more with Ron Paul when we come back right here on MidPoint. Back to the issues with doctor, author, former congressman, and man who fears no issue, Ron Paul. Dr. Paul, I want to go back to something you said in the last segment. And again, you've always talked about military spending overseas, but let me bring this up. We have the Russians perhaps sending missiles that could be nuclear tipped to Iran. We have Iran looking to go after Israel. We have all the basic discourse in the Middle East and so many other places, and America under siege around the world. What happens, though, if you start taking the military out from around the world, you start bringing them home? Aren't you basically making us more liable to be under attack in different areas of the world? And that would then bring it home. Don't we need to start fighting them overseas?
You know, I understand what you're saying, but I see it exactly opposite way, because I think it's our presence over there that stirs up the problems. I mean, we're the ones who got rid of an elected leader in Ukraine, and now we're sending troops. In the last couple months, there's 12 people been murdered in western Ukraine because they were part of the Yanukovych administration. And right now, there's no evidence since 2003 that the Iranians have worked on a nuclear weapon. And so I think that us being involved, the intervention is involved, we've stirred up more trouble. ISIS is a consequence of our policy in Iraq and Afghanistan, and particularly in Syria. And we're on both sides of the Iranians right now. We delivered Iraq to the Iranians, and yet in Yemen, we're fighting them, but up in Syria, we're with them. Can you imagine the stupidity of all this, where we as a people are supporting weapons on both, with one country on both sides of the war, and now we're getting ready to send weapons. We're sending troops right now. A battalion's going to Iran to get involved in that civil war.
But doesn't that say to us?
I would say the consequence is always very, very negative. We don't have a moral authority to involve ourselves in the internal affairs in these civil wars.
Doesn't that say to us then, though, not just this administration, the one before it, the one before that, and the one before that? These are problems, these are things that have been happening over decades now. It's not as if this all of a sudden just snapped up and bit us, correct?
I think you're absolutely right. And that is my point that I've been talking about for so long, that one of the worst things is the Bush doctrine that he can go to war to prevent war, preventive war, even without the consent of the Congress. And that is essentially what we've been doing since World War II. So I can't pick one party that's worse than the other, but certainly 2008 was a revelation to the American people, and they threw the Republicans out mainly because of these war efforts. It was a disaster. People got sick and tired. Matter of fact, they're still sick and tired of them. They don't want troops. They want to send cruise missiles and a little bit of drones in order to pretend that we're doing something and try to hire out and train surrogates for us, which never has worked. And the fighting goes on. The longer we've been there, the stronger Al-Qaeda has gotten, and the stronger, and of course, the creation of ISIS. So I don't think there's any evidence that we've been very successful in what we've been doing in that region.
I got about 2 minutes left, and I'm going to get you for some quick hitters here on a few other things. There are people now who say that it is time to abolish the IRS. Come on, Dr. Paul, don't we know that that is absolutely incredibly unfashionable, but it's unrealistic to think that you can just blow the IRS down?
I would agree with you if people endorse the current government, the current government of warfare and welfare. No, you don't not only need the IRS, you need deficit financing, you need the Federal Reserve to print the money and keep the boondoggle going until the whole thing collapses. So no, you can't. If you got rid of the IRS tomorrow and didn't change the role of government, there would be serious repercussions. But we, as believers in liberty, do not believe that we should be running a welfare state. We believe in sound money. We don't believe in printing money, and we don't believe we should be the policemen of the world. Under those conditions, just think we only got the IRS 100 years ago. So I would say that we ought to look to our own history and it wasn't too bad after all.
When you talk about liberty, I've only got about 60 seconds left. At Newsmax.com right now, our lead story. A majority of Americans say the country is on the road to full marriage equality. Nearly three-quarters say sexual orientation should be protected from discrimination. Is this a fight that the GOP needs to just believe and understand that they've lost?
No, the fight shouldn't exist. The government should be out of it. I don't believe in government endorsement of any marriage. Every two people can decide what they want to call their associations. We shouldn't need licenses. We shouldn't have the government sanction, and there would be no argument. This whole idea, I happen to have a very precise definition of marriage and have practiced it for more than 50 years, but I'm not in the mood to use the federal government to dictate and define. And just think how peaceful it would be if it had no ramifications, just let everybody do what they want. And as long as there's no coercion, there should be no prohibition against what people want to do, but there should be no coercion of individuals who want to call marriage and impose it on somebody else. That's where the problem comes from. Neutrality in this, and no prohibitions, and always a choice would solve this problem.
Dr. Paul, one of these days we're going to spend about 3 hours together and just go over all this. We could do that and do it easy. I always thank you for your time, Dr. Paul. Take care. We'll talk to you again.
Sure thing.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Ebola devastated the lives of millions in West Africa. It's not gone yet. MidPoint continues.